In the last couple of episodes, we were looking at a couple of places that I somewhat doubt my largely English-speaking audience would have come across. And this compounds the issue of how to get our work seen on a platform that seems determined to bury us alive. But as I was wrapping up the script for Euboea, I got to thinking about many other places that, short of passing through themselves, it would be near zero chance that anyone I talked to in the UK would have heard of. Even all the history, archaeology heads, they will be the first to compartmentalise and specialise. Just because you're into the Iron Age or Roman history of Britain does not mean you then automatically catch up with absolutely everything everywhere else. So I thought it would be nice to spotlight a few lesser-known places that we've seen so far. The geography of Greece just takes a while. You have to really sit with it and ideally see it to start to keep track. I mean, just keeping all the islands in your head is a Sisyphean task in that there's just so much going on. And for all the lovely and inspiring places around the UK, there is a lot, particularly in England and particularly in the middle, really all the way from Hampshire to Manchester, which is just this. It's pretty much just farmland, just some other bits, sure, occasional variation, but a whole lot of farmland that really requires no interrogation. You can't walk in it. It's not nature, it's just some private fields made into an ecological desert by design. That's really all. Whereas Greece, low-angle flag shot, we keep forgetting to do those, you can scarcely go 5 yards without tripping over a mountain, a ruin 2,000 to 3,000 years old, or a Byzantine church, in not a few cases, perhaps all three. And I simply cannot think of a single location in Greece where I felt boredom or disinterest. There's just so much to see and experience. Now, to be clear, this is not a list of the most extreme, obscure, oh my goodness, places in Greece. Not by a long way. For that, there's any number of uninhabited islets or almost entirely untouched mountain peaks, of which Greece has about 1 billion of each. So no, there is nothing especially extreme about this list. In fact, really the opposite. These are some mostly quiet, nice places, but they're also not just insignificant nowhere towns. You can get a good Freddo espresso, almost all of these, and these are places you'll be really glad you visited. I was really glad I visited. Also, unavoidably, this comes from the perspective of an English-speaking British national with an unusual enthusiasm for ancient history. If you are a Greek national, I'm not expecting to be telling you anything about your own country that you don't already know, but would be genuinely interested to hear your perspective on some of these. Before we started extensively crisscrossing the UK to film ancient and medieval sites, I might have heard of some of these places around, but I'd never actually been to see them, and in the same way, I kind of doubt someone living on Rhodes has automatically zigzagged all the way across Macedonia or Thessaly, necessarily. There's one for a field sobriety test. Thessaly, necessarily. Anyway, at the end, I'm going to put a small section of places that we are yet to go to and are very much hoping to when time and money allow. Let's put an intro here. So we are Forest Archaic Collective, and as well as making jungle drum and bass, we've followed ancient sites across Europe and beyond, whether it's Neolithic standing stones, Roman arches, or Romanesque churches. If it's ancient, we're into it. I meant to say, at the end of the episode, we're going to try a game, so stick around to the end. Now, we'll treat Euboea as number 1 on this list, so go and watch that episode and come back. And I mean, really, it feels like Aegina should be number 2. I mean, its comparatively high footfall arises from its proximity to Athens, but its profile is otherwise pretty low for those outside the country. But, and this is in no particular order, by the way, for number 2, Vonitsa. So this is what I'm talking about. This is no great gotcha, but it is a place that's really worth a visit. I saw this in 2020. This was an unusual trip for many reasons. Flying into Preveza, October 2020, so many COVID restrictions at that point. It's a near miracle I was actually still able to visit at all. I made a short episode principally about Lefkada, which kind of completed the 4 largest Ionian... that just got auto-corrected to Iranian, not quite. Ionian Islands. The actual amount of time I could spend on Lefkada itself was hamstrung by the buses on which I was relying, and honestly, catching a few more things in the near vicinity like the very extensive ruins of Nicopolis was hugely rewarding. So these are places sitting around this large body of water here, the Ambracian Gulf, and just in the south, a modest-sized town with a way above average castle. Vonitsa was just lovely. This was some glorious sunshine for October. The cooler weather meant that the views off to the mountains in the north were much clearer. era. Unsurprisingly, the castle was the main focus of our visit, and it is a great one. I'm not going to derail this episode by turning it into a full-on Venetian Republic episode. For that, we have an as yet incomplete playlist that you need to load up. But the fortifications here are of Byzantine origins and were a major power centre for the Despotate of Epirus, which may be my favourite ever political unit of history, just based on the title alone. Now, Venitza is also a bit of an outlier. You know, the Venetians had lost their power centres in the Peloponnese, more on that in a bit, but then they regained them from the Ottomans in a stunning comeback starting in 1684. But then 30 years passed, and generally not ingratiating themselves to the locals, the Venetians kind of managed to snatch a defeat from the jaws of victory by losing pretty much all of their gains there on the Greek mainland. However, in 1717, the Venetians did manage to retake Venitza and would continue to hold it until the end of the Republic. There's actually a quite incredible painting of this. This is the Venetian assault on the town. All that stuff we need to interrogate far more in a future Venetian Republic-focused episode. I didn't get as much from the town itself, other than this fishmonger, but it was so peaceful and lovely, and also, yeah, you could get a decent espresso. So to jump somewhere contrastingly distant, this is the island of Ios, somewhere which most devices helpfully invert the upper and lower cases into iOS. Again, this is not the obscurest of the obscure. In fact, because it's on the way between Santorini and Naxos/Paros, these are places that are very popular, meaning quite a lot of people do pass this, but it doesn't have anywhere near the profile of the aforementioned, and it's fairly safe to say that amongst the other Cycladic islands in the area, this is the quiet one. We featured this as part of our episode on Paros a little bit ago. There's sort of a spread between the port area and Hora, a little higher up. Hora is very charming, and as well as these blue dome churches, which, you know, as with many such churches around the Cyclades, are not of great antiquity, but still very pleasant. I'm definitely here for this. And yeah, the tight but quiet streets near the top by these ruined windmills, all really peaceful, just absolutely lovely stuff. And there's the ancient Cycladic settlement of Skarkos, and that's more than enough excuse to be here on the island. So yes, it is a quiet one. Kind of feels like somewhere you'd go to write a book. Not something I'm currently doing, maybe in the future sometime. But sure, while it is a quiet one, in the island chain where Santorini, definitely Mykonos, and sadly more and more Paros are just becoming a bit much, kind of in every sense of the word, in cost, in everything around every corner being a selfie spot. Ios is a bit of an antidote from that. Just something to keep an eye on. It is within line of sight of Santorini, and that of course has an airport and pretty good links, but I was seeing these ferry trips of over 4 hours between Santorini and Ios, and I was like, what? What are we, like, rowing there with oars? So yeah, it turns out on some trips they go all the way to Naxos, then Paros, and then all the way back to Ios last. Now, you might not encounter that issue. Just do keep an eye on journey times before you book. You don't really want to be on these boats for like more than 3 hours. It gets to be a lot. Okay, next, and some light cheating here, as this is a pair of places. We never actually got to putting these in an episode, at least not yet. In summer 2021, yeah, I know, we revisited Crete, and that became 4 episodes, and after that we got a ferry to Athens, followed by Nafplio, and further into the Peloponnese. Just in the way we did things, this back half of the trip didn't become an episode. As you've seen so far, we're on this big project banking huge quantities of footage for future endeavours, and a big reason to be down in the southwestern extremity of the Peloponnese, the 2 fortresses of Koroni and Methone. These were major Venetian possessions and were known as the Eyes of the Republic for their strategic position at the head of the Ionian Sea, leading up to the Adriatic and Venice itself. Now, more to the point, the Venetians built big here. Now, again, an episode on the Venetian Republic, this is not, but you can see that both these towns have incredible fortresses. I ended up getting a hilariously early bus for Koroni. I think it was 5 a.m, and there was mainly just a bunch of folks going to work at, I think it was a power plant. And they're kind of just looking at me like, who's this guy? So Koroni is a bit more ruined. You get a good sense of it from above, but in many places it is somewhat coming apart. It's changed hands numerous times, not just between Venetians and Ottomans. It was also bombarded during the Orlov Revolt. This is something that wasn't really on my radar, but there was an attempt by the Russian Navy to sort of foment a local rebellion in 1770. You can see within there's a mixture of later structures, and you can also see traces of earlier Byzantine churches. The town itself wasn't really awake since I was there at like barely 7 a.m. But after a switchover of buses and briefly catching a Tholos tomb along the way, Methoni, now this was an incredible place. The town is quite small, but this just plonked on the beach with the most incredible views. Just irresistible. This may well be one of the most impressive and beautiful surviving Venetian forts in Greece, and that is a crowded category. Both of these need a revisit, along with some actual time in Pylos, which despite passing through, we didn't actually have time to stop in. As people are always keen to point out in the comments, yeah, we've done a lot with buses in Greece over the years. It's not the best way. You know, it takes out some of the headaches that can come with having hire cars, but they really did constrict us in terms of times, and yeah, it wasn't the best way to do this, really. And yet, this was actually a bit of a funny addendum to the trip we were taking in Kalamata. You know, this was during a punishing heat wave, and I mean, I have nothing especially unkind to say about Kalamata. It does have this rather nice old church in the middle and a bit of a ruined castle. This is a town, it's a place in Greece that just isn't really for us. As in, it's not really got that much to recommend itself to tourists. It's a city that just exists for the Greeks that live there. And, like, great. I always feel such a pang of guilt when a beautiful Greek place has been almost entirely given over to tourist restaurants and signage in English and just general tat. And there's almost nothing in sight for the actual local residents. Kalamata is kind of trying. It does have an international airport, but yeah, the city itself, just not as much there to see. I'm sure there's a puzzle piece that I'm not really getting here, but despite being kind of quite out of the way, Kalamata does get these really high prices, like even £400. Like, why does... I know it would be handy to fly there, but I've got no clue what that's about. It feels like you're stepping on some sort of very particular trap card of the airline industry, but I don't have all the answers as to why. So yes, the pair of Koroni and Methoni will just say all of the Messenia Peninsula, large amount of unfinished business there, that's for sure. Well, moving along and heading all the way to the north, this is Ioannina, a place I'm never sure I'm really getting the proper inflection there, but it's something close to that. And again, what's really striking is the disconnect of how large this place is compared with how few outside of Greece will know this is here. It actually has an airport, but it's not an international airport, so probably don't expect to be catching a flight to here. It's perched on a lake just about 50 kilometers south of the Albanian border. I was there, again, as part of the Lefkada trip I mentioned earlier, got a bus through the dramatic landscape of Epirus. This is a long way from the dry landscape of the Cyclades in summer that a lot of people picture when they think of Greece. This is a very mountainous and green part of the country, and Ioannina itself is just incredibly charming. A large part of the town just by the lake is taken up with the old fortress, much of which has significant Ottoman fortifications, a few mosques, some Byzantine remains. I was kind of there for this unusual Easter egg, a Norman tower. Yes, those Normans. Built in Greece, the Tower of Bohemond was part of one of the Norman invasions of the Balkans in the 1000s. Overall, and I'm reticent to do this. I find it very tedious when people do it's the X of Y formulation. That's how every Neolithic monument ever gets called the Stonehenge of insert town or region. Yep, very tedious. But making comparisons of anything from Lake Garda in North Italy, or perhaps Lake Ohrid not as far away. Yeah, it's not as big, but I really do think that anyone who visited this would love it. History nerd or not, it's just very easy to fall in love with. Okay, one more, and I got indecisive with this, so I sort of split the difference. Definitely cheating, I don't know, file a lawsuit. So our trip to Thessaloniki was incredibly special, and for what seemed to be really arbitrary YouTube reasons, people seemed to really like that episode. I did think it was a good episode, but not like 35,800 views better. Yeah, you might have gathered from recent episodes that the platform has decided to lock our episodes in a cupboard, Harry Potter style, and even with about 5,000 people who at least at one time thought we were alright-ish, the trend recently on the platform is to put us in the feeds of maybe downwards of 200 people for about 36 hours, and then disown us faster than if your friend screamed jihad at a crowded airport. The biggest indignity, it's about this time it's making a graph to show you how much worse the platform has decided that this episode is going to do. Just a reminder, the platform has already arbitrarily decided how many people it's going to put this in front of, at which point you can essentially kick rocks. But as it shows you a graph about how much worse they are making you do, the biggest insult of all It's fewer, 39 fewer than normal, please. Just to underline how arbitrary this is, like as I'm cutting this episode together, the Euboea episode is actually doing quite well. But it's, okay, not to sound ungrateful, but you've just, in 48 hours, you've given us more views on one video than you gave our last 3. Like, why? Like I said, this is not based on human behaviour at all. It's just an algorithm talking to itself and making random decisions that seem to be based on just about nothing. So yeah, look, thanks to everyone who saw that episode. If you're here from that, well, great to have you along, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing just stopping them dumping this and the next few months of episodes on their butt, so we could still massively use your help. If you aren't subscribed, that's obviously a plus, and thank you. If you are, also thank you. The bell actually gives you a chance to see what we're up to. Otherwise, without a notification, we've been disappeared faster than a party member of the Soviet Union in the Stalin years. And hey, feel free to drop which bits of Greece you've been able to see in the comments. There really is so much to catch in the country. But back to Thessaloniki. We did head out of town on several days. Meteora is just incredible, but far too well known to make this list. We did head west to Vergina and caught the royal tombs at Aigai. There was a lot more Macedonian / Alexander the Great era stuff we wanted to catch, but a lot of it was still closed from the tombs, and then from what I gather, the palace at Aigai has only just recently reopened after being renovated for like decades. And trying to catch Pella on the way back, oh, they were having a strike that day. Okay, so as far as our journey further east, now Philippi was amazing, really special, but you can't really call yourself obscure if you have a book in the New Testament named after you. So I called to the stand the Byzantine castle of Retina. Like I said, cheating, it's not exactly a town. There is a village nearby, but this was such a singular experience. So the drive had been amazing that day. The April sunshine, and again, the greenery. This is a colour palette most people don't associate with Greece, but if you're there, particularly in spring, particularly in the north, we'd already caught the Byzantine Tower of St. Basil on the shores of Lake Koronia that morning, had an extremely pleasant drive along some really nice smooth motorway with stunning views, all the way to Philippi, and then on our way back, we stopped off here. We're just near the shores of Lake Volvi, and we had this just incredible walk. You wouldn't actually confuse this with the English countryside if you were there. The plant life and just generally the flowers and the aromas were just too different, but wow, the flowers. But as you can see, the vibe is a lot closer than you'd expect. Lots of rolling grassy hills. And yes, perched on top of this hill is the fortified Byzantine settlement of Retina, which we really do also need a revisit because time got the better of us and we had to park a modest distance away. Just this whole area, Macedonia and into Thrace, is an incredible place to be exploring. Yes, particularly in spring, and this dovetails nicely into places we still need to get to that maybe aren't the first you think of when it comes to Greece. So much more here in the north. In particular, there's this whole scatter of ruins around Amphipolis that we need to see. I am dead curious to get even further east to the Turkish-Bulgarian border, to a part of Greece visitors very rarely go, and see, I want to say, Didi-Motaiko? Sure, I've got that wrong. Both the castle, and I have some unfinished business from our Forgotten Mosques episode to see what's happened to the Bayezid Mosque, which was burnt in a huge fire in 2017. Also want to catch this. We were recently flying over this, the Athos Peninsula. This is one of the 3 kind of fingers that extend out from the chunk of land that extends out from around Thessaloniki. It's full of ancient monasteries. It's a lot. We mentioned Epirus a bunch. Definitely overdue to get some time in Arta and kind of just catch up more around the Ambracian Gulf, as well as seeing Venitza again and getting more time at Nicopolis. We've got a lot of things to see around Boeotia, all the way through Thebes and some of the Mycenaean and Neolithic stuff around Volos. In terms of islands, there is, of course, a huge amount to see, but to shout out some who don't get as much appreciation, Kythera is not as easy to get to. It's south of the Peloponnese. It's not really part of any other island chain to speak of. Massive Venetian castle in the south. We are still very much underexplored in the Eastern Aegean, but Lesbos is huge. It's the 3rd largest in Greece. That's it there, but the light was not really working with me on this day. The castle of Mytilene, just loads more. A little below this, Chios. Hadn't appreciated just how huge the fortifications of the old town are, and a lot of other places too. but I'm happy to say that you can see all the places we've already caught in the Greece and Greek islands playlist. Just had to tee that up, whether it's the Cyclades, loads from Crete, yes, Thessaloniki. We've also recently added more from Athens, Euboea we mentioned, and Aegina. Just have a watch of all of those. Now, speaking of which, I thought you could all join me in a game. Don't worry, I'm not wearing a jigsaw mask. It needs a clear day, which we often don't get on our flights over, but some of the most remarkable footage we've ever caught on the channel has been out the window of an aeroplane. Most recently, getting these passes of Kos as we were coming in, the light was just so good. So as someone who spends an above average time looking at maps, let's say, I enjoy seeing if I can identify various landmarks, cities or islands from above, and with no Wi-Fi on board, I can't confirm till later. So I'm going to give you a few rounds of this and we'll reveal the answers next episode. The clue is that we were taking off from Mykonos, so, heading to the UK, just kind of keep that heading in mind. This is back in autumn 2024. Okay, first one. This island, that's almost all of it in frame. It's actually a little bit of a hard one to start, but stick with it. Number 2, and if you've seen recent episodes, I think we actually already referenced this, was feeling pretty good that I managed to identify this from above. Nice lighting too. Number 3, this one is a bit too easy for Greek nationals, but I reckon anyone who's been past will also maybe know this one. And similarly, number 4, what major city and landmark is this? So I will stick with those 4. I'd just be interested to see if anyone gets all 4 of them, and we'll reveal the answers next time, which is going to be a very different episode, by the way. It's actually a first time in Germany for us. And if you've enjoyed the music in the background, it's ours. We make all the music for these episodes, and you can catch it on bandcamp.com. If you want to support the channel, that's the place to do it. Also, these episodes take a bit of a while to make. You might have gathered a lot of the stuff for this episode was from years ago. So if you want to keep up on what we're doing on more of a week-by-week basis, follow us on Blue Sky. And yes, please subscribe and hit the bell. That would be a massive help. And thank you, and we'll catch you very soon.